Hey guys, Steven here, Fanatic Perspective. Texas is beating Michigan on Saturday, and I'm going to tell you why. Thank you to Bleacher Report for having me here. Definitely repping the Texas Longhorns. This is the biggest matchup of the season. Two teams that were in the playoffs last year. Obviously, Michigan, the defending national champions. A lot of credit to Michigan. A lot of success they had under Jim Harbaugh, Jesse Minter, and Sharon Moore. Sharon Moore now the head coach at Michigan, and you have Wink Martindale and Kirk Campbell now taking over as the offensive coordinator as the brain trust there at Michigan. But when you look at what Texas is returning under Steve Sarkisian and what Texas has added, especially on the defensive side with Johnny Nanson's success he had at Arizona, I'm really excited what Texas is going to put together and show the country come this Saturday in Ann Arbor. And there's a lot of talking points here and things we can get into in terms of nuance about this football game. Top 10 matchup, like I said, two playoff teams, two teams that are very dynamic, physical NFL players on both sides, a lot of new faces on both sides. I do want to say this, though, and I want to be very, very clear here. Texas is the better football team as of right now. The important thing is right now. This game isn't being played last year. This game isn't with last year's Michigan personnel. This game isn't with last year's Michigan coaching staff. Texas is the better football team right now. I mean, we can go position by position. We can go coach. I mean, Steve Sarkisian versus a young, up-and-coming, promising Sharon Moore. I'm giving that edge to Steve Sarkisian and that coaching staff. If we look at the quarterback position, right, Quinn Ewers, who I have as a Heisman candidate and somebody who can potentially be one of the best quarterbacks, if not the best quarterback in the SEC, and somebody who has a lot of expectations in terms of the 2025 NFL draft. Yeah, I'm taking Quinn Ewers over Davis Warren and Alex Orji, who are young guys, in terms of experience. And quite frankly, what we saw last week against Fresno, and we have to take that with a grain of salt from a perspective. I know Michigan will look to bring their A game come Saturday, but I'm taking Quinn Ewers over Davis Warren and Alex Orji. The running back situation for both teams, I would consider that a push at best. I actually like Texas' situation, but I have a lot of respect for Donovan Edwards and what he has done in big games. So I'll give the running back a push. The receivers, that is a big edge for Texas. If we look down the Isaiah Bond, Matthew Golden, Jonte Cook, DeAndre Moore, and a young freshman by the name of Ryan Wingo, who graded out as our Texas's top offensive player, 90.8 grade from Pro Football Focus this past week in his debut, 4 catches, 70 yards against Colorado State. Yeah, Texas has serious firepower on the offensive side of the ball in that receiver room. I have, respect to Morgan and some of those receivers there at Michigan, but I think you saw some of the issues that they encountered against Fresno State last week. And look, they did not reload that position to what was lost the way Texas reloaded their position to what was lost with Xavier Worthy, A.D. Mitchell, and Jordan Whittington. So I have a big edge at receiver and just overall speed to Texas. Tight end, Loveland's the best tight end in the country. Michigan gets that, period. Texas is not weak at tight end. Texas will deploy a lot of 12 personnel, 2 tight end sets. You'll see some where they'll have 2 pass catchers on the field at all times, Gunnar Helm and a combination of either Juan Davis or Amari Niblock, or they'll have a bigger set with Malik Agbo in there for running purposes. But there's a lot of dynamic things Texas does at tight end. But Michigan gets the edge. Loveland is in my opinion, the best tight end in the country, especially the returning production. What he did last week against Fresno, kid's a dog. Kid's a dog. So, and by the way, chat is active for anybody that wants to jump in and chime in here. More than welcome to talk with me. I am friendly and love chatting with y'all. But and that's something I do over on my channel, Fanatic Perspective, on YouTube. Who, for those who are not necessarily familiar, as we get into the offensive line, Texas gets the edge with offensive line. I know people are going to say, well, Michigan style of play, that's what they do. Well, blase. With the returning starters and the firepower on the Texas offensive line, Texas, the experience alone and the collective starts, not to mention Kelvin Banks, left tackle, top 5 pick in the 2025 NFL draft. You can book it, health willing. The 6-year experience of Jake Majors at center. Right tackle Cam Williams, who was co-SEC Offensive Lineman of the Week this past week, and just his second start. He's the only new starter on this Texas offensive line. At guard, they have a DJ Campbell, who is also an NFL prospect, 5-star recruit, who has now started an entire year in his second year as a starter. Then a left guard, Hayden Connors, in his third year as a starter. And that's not to mention the rotation of Cole Hudson, who's also started a full year of football, and some very, very talented freshmen behind him. Michigan, I do like their tackle situation, and I think that their offensive line will be better in terms of what we'll see Saturday, especially running the football. But a lot of those guys haven't had the most snaps, considering what they're replacing from last season. Now, Michigan's going to try to win this game on defense. Let's just be honest. Will Johnson, Mason Graham, dogs, All-American players, NFL players. That's where Michigan's bread is going to be buttered, stopping the opponent, creating turnovers, simulated pressures. Wink Martindale of the Baltimore Ravens and the genesis of that Michigan defense that has given them so much success since 2021 when they started this streak. Look, 2021 they went 12-2. 2022 they went 13-1 in the last year, obviously 15-0 national champions. Simulated pressures and what they've done to be multiple via the Baltimore Ravens, starting with Coach McDonald. Wink Martindale is one of the architects of that. And you look at what Jesse Minter and Coach McDonald, who's now over at the Seattle Seahawks, Jesse Minter now with the Los Angeles Chargers, what they learned from Wink Martindale. Wink Martindale's now taking over the defense as DC and play caller. So I do expect them to try to harass Quinn Ewers with a lot of those tactics. The good thing is, from an NFL standpoint, Steve Sarkisian is right there tactically with what Michigan deploy. I've heard a lot of Michigan fans say, well, this defense was constructed to stop those high-powered Ohio State offenses that C.J. Stroud was deploying. We know they had the Infinity Stones at wide receiver. Shout out to Brian Hartline and what he's done in recruiting, putting those rooms together. And yes, Michigan has done a great job the last few years of slowing down those attacks, those high-flying attacks. I've heard Michigan fans reference Washington last year. Excuse me. Hey, we went up against Michael Penix Jr., Roma Dunze, Jalen McMillan, Jalen Polk, and we were able to shut those guys down and hold them to 13 points. Texas is not that. That's number one. Number two, you don't even have the personnel that you had to that put those things in the position to have that success. But Texas is not similar to Ohio State offensively, even if you're looking at firepower and scoring, nor are they similar to Washington. Texas is going to mimic more of a Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay type approach, a lot of condensed sets, mixing and matching of zone blocking in the run game, and sticking to 50-50 run-pass principles. Everything in their passing game and concepts is married to the run so that they look the same. The difference will be window dressing on certain plays, but this is not spread them out, air raid concepts, tons of mesh going on, flood concepts. Texas is not necessarily that. And we're also not what Washington was, where it was a lot of contested stuff, a lot of back shoulder, a lot of just our guy's better than your guy, and we're putting them in space to be isolated to go win. That's not how Texas is going to play football. The key to this game is going to be space on both sides of the ball for both of these teams. Texas offensively is going to try to get their speedsters, those track stars that I mentioned earlier, into space. Screens, deep crossers off of play action, right? Trying to get out into space, replacing the pressure of within that sim. One of the things that has actually prepared Texas a lot is their time in the Big 12. A lot of these defensive coordinators looking to slow down Steve Sarkisian's offense went a lot to a bunch of 3 high concepts with their safeties and trying to flood the field and make us, matriculate the ball downfield, whether it's the run game or have things underneath. What that's enabled Texas to do is create a lot of concepts to where they're used to throwing into heavy coverage or running on light boxes, if you will. So Michigan, for them, can you stop Texas from running the ball and shut them down with a lighter box while having help for guys like Will Johnson in coverage, which will need help? Or do you try to sell out and completely stop the run, loading up the box, trying to play the numbers game, and leave those speedsters one-on-one on the outside? We saw space issues in the Fresno State game with their personnel. And that's just what's on tape. This isn't to poo-poo Michigan or to say that they cannot do it. Obviously, they are one of the top defenses in the country for a reason. And I expect them to cause a lot of confusion with the offensive line of Texas with stunts and, again, those simulated pressures to try to get Quinn to see ghosts or to try to get some of that interior offensive line to have issues with communication, right? That's the purpose of those type of fronts. But Wink is going to send pressure early to set the tone there, okay? Wink will send pressure early to set the tone there. How Texas responds to that and staying true to themselves under Steve Sarkisian, again, 50-50 run-pass splits in terms of run-pass ratio will be the key here. And Quinn Ewers establishing that play action to hit guys like Isaiah Bond, Matthew Golden, and Jonte Cook downfield for big chunk plays in space. Also, Texas running backs are a big threat, not just running the football, but in the passing game. And that is not just with your traditional screens in the backfield. You will see running backs splitting out wide, lining up in the slot, creating mismatches, again, getting those backers into space. Everything is married up into concepts where they may have jet motion. They may run it a couple times, and the third time they may pop out and get somebody isolated on an arrow route. So these are things where Michigan's going to have a lot of good eyes and discipline to remain content with that, of what you try to decide to give up to Texas and what you want to stay home with and have your guys win naturally. Mason Graham's an All-American. I'm sure you're going to want to let him play ball, try to win up front. Josiah Stewart, bad boy, right? So Michigan has some opportunities here to make their money within these matchups, defensive line versus our offensive line. But I see Texas getting into space and having a lot of success come Saturday. And Quinn Ewers is in year 3 of a Steve Sarkisian offense. Third-year quarterbacks under Sark. You look at Mark Sanchez leading his team to the Rose Bowl back in the mid-2000s. Carson Palmer, year 3, winning the Heisman Trophy. Matt Leinart, obviously the success he had throughout his USC career. On to Jake Locker, who he transformed into an NFL draft pick. And more recently with the Alabama quarterbacks, Mac Jones, Tua Tagovailoa, the success that they had in transforming those guys into first-round pick quarterbacks. That's what you're going to have to deal with if you're Michigan. It's a lot on the plate. And I just think that at this point in time, as I said at the beginning of this stream, Texas is the better team coming into this football game. And that's going to be a lot that Michigan's have to deal with. And if I'm Sharon Moore, how do I get to that 27 to 30 point mark? Because that's the baseline at which Steve Sarkisian has lived offensively in his time married with Quinn Ewers. They have consistently hit 27 to 30 points at minimum, regardless of the opponent. Not to mention Quinn Ewers, believe 5 touchdowns to just 1 interception against top 10 teams in his career with Steve Sarkisian. He's been very, very sharp against the best competition, especially defensively. Reference Texas going into Alabama, right? The success that he had against guys like Dallas Turner, Nick Saban out there throwing out a lot of exotic stuff. Caleb Downs out there, Kool-Aid McKinstry, and the success that Texas ultimately had. Have a comment here from, let me put this one up. I think we'll see a lot of exotic blitz packages that we haven't seen before from our defense. So Johnny Nansen, and thank you for that comment. I appreciate it. Johnny Nansen, former defensive coordinator from Arizona, now a kind of co-DC role at Texas with Pete Kwiatkowski, but also our linebackers coach, has added some of that stuff that he did successfully in terms of some of those more exotic packages, as well as coverage schemes from Arizona. One thing that we actually saw last week against Colorado State was a NASCAR package of Colin Simmons, Anthony Hill Jr., Trey Moore on the outsides, with Alfred Collins and Vernon Broughton on the inside, 2 guys that are potential NFL tackles, replacing T'Vondre Sweat and Byron Murphy, who were, probably 1 and 2 in terms of defensive tackles last year in college football. We know, obviously the hardware that T'Vondre Sweat left with as an All-American, as well as Byron Murphy. That package with the 6 DBs on the field, yeah, that's going to be a problem if you're able to get Michigan into consistent passing downs, because I don't see Davis Warren throwing Michigan out of that. As good as Loveland is, and he will get his, especially on first and second down, if Michigan decides to be a little bit more aggressive and break tendency and keep things aggressive to keep up and throwing more on first and second down, especially utilizing that tight end who will line up also in the slot. You will see Loveland in the slot as well. I don't think that's enough to keep up with Texas. And when I talked about the Texas speed, that also translates to the defense. Transfer Andrew Makuba from Clemson, who was one of the first DB at Clemson to start as a true freshman since 1973, 74 season. He's now at Texas, starting next to Michael Taft in the secondary. 2 guys with tons of experience, tons of starts under their belt, that are awesome communicators. Andrew Makuba could have gone to the NFL last year. He's looking to up his stock. Jahdae Barron has now moved over to corner, who had an outstanding debut playing the field corner position against Colorado State. He's had an amazing career at Texas, also looking to up his draft stock. Malik Muhammad, coveted corner, already tons of experience. Many are familiar with his with his kin, his brother Jabbar Muhammad, his cousin Jabbar Muhammad over at Oregon. Those guys are, unbelievable, South Dallas high school prospects that have become amazing college players. So Texas's defensive back front, and that's not even getting to the Derek Williams and the Jelani McDonalds and some of the speed on the back end that they will present. Those are guys that are also very, very sound in terms of run fits and helping out in the run game. Texas is not the same defense, I will say, as last year, where we were, first, second, third in the country against the run and holding folks to 2.5 yards per carry with T'Vondre Sweat and Byron Murphy. No, they're not going to be that. But what this defense is a faster, attack the football, hard-hitting defense that will cause a lot of problems for any team looking to run the football on a consistent basis. And especially as Texas what they've gotten out of the portal with Bill Norton and Tavea from Arizona, who followed Coach Nansen to Texas. Those guys are going to be a problem up front as well. Another comment, yeah, dime Tampa 2. You're going to see. We saw some variances of cover 2 last week in the Colorado State game. Texas does like to play a lot of cover 3 or cover 1 sometimes match, but there's a lot of variables with the versatility that Texas has in their secondary. I think that's going to present a lot of issues to Michigan. If you're Michigan, you're trying to run the football, shorten up this game, and make it a fist fight, right? Play these guys in a phone booth and hope Texas struggles with execution. Hope Texas struggles with short yardage, issues, right? Things that have plagued Texas in the past, quite frankly. 4th and 1s, 4th and 2s, a lot of things that cost them the Oklahoma game in the Red River rivalry last year. So if you're Michigan, you're looking to harp on those things and say, hey, we're the tougher team. We want to, kind of do some of the similar things that Notre Dame did last week when they went to Kyle Field against Texas A&M. The problem with that is that the Texas personnel, with the experience that they have in big games and the success that they've had, I think the timing of this, I think Texas is where Michigan was 2022, 2023 at this time frame, starting to ramp right into that 13-1 product that we saw Michigan ramp into. And right now, just with the firepower that Michigan has lost, both with the roster and the coaching staff, in a big game like this, I don't see Michigan out coaching them and putting enough points on the board to really challenge Texas. There's a reason why this line has moved from -4 Texas to now -7.5 Texas and moving, right? I mean, some models even have it as -8.5, -9.5, and that's the concern over the Michigan offense. And they look putrid against Fresno State. I think Michigan fans that are being honest can tell you that. Again, expect them to play much better football, execution-wise, but if Michigan gets down a score or 2, Davis Warren's going to bring them back. Alex Orji's going to bring them back. Like, what's that look like? Where they consistently have to hit passes down the field. I feel like there's one path to victory for Michigan, whereas I see multiple paths to victory for Texas, even if they get off to a sluggish start or have to overcome some adversity on the road, which very well could happen. I give special teams in this game a push. Both teams have great kickers. Texas's punter is a little young and unproven, but I don't expect Texas to punt a whole lot. And Jeff Banks is one of the best special teams coaches in the country. They have been really buttoned up. And one name to look out for that I will give you guys here on Bleacher Report, Silas Bolden, transfer from Oregon State. He was the one that caught the Arch Manning touchdown pass last week against Colorado State. Didn't do a whole lot. He had a nice punt return. I think you will see some really cool packages and some exotic things on the offensive side from Steve Sarkisian to get a guy like Silas Bolden, a very explosive, shifty, 5'8", 5'9", smaller guy, but a guy that once he's in space is a nightmare to deal with and a nightmare to match up with. Space being the key. Look out for Silas Bolden to be a problem for Michigan in this game. Both teams were vanilla last week. But one of the things I always say is all vanilla means is we're running our base offense. That has nothing to do with execution. Texas, once they woke up late first quarter, second quarter onward, executed. Michigan had challenges with that, just executing their basic stuff. I know they got stuff in the bag for Texas. I know Texas has stuff in the bag for Michigan. But I look at consistency of execution, and that's, again, where coaching experience comes into play here, right? So let me know. Anybody watching in the chat, feel free to ask any questions. Let me know your predictions for this football game. I have Texas winning this football game by the score. I'm going to go 27-17 Texas. I have them winning by 10. I think Michigan is going to put up a good fight. I think Michigan's actually going to be able to put up some points early to try to, get the crowd on their side and all those type of things. But I see Steve Sarkisian getting to that baseline. I see speed being an issue, and I see Quinn Ewers putting up 2-3 touchdowns in the air against that Michigan secondary and capitalizing on big play opportunities, a lot which were there for Fresno State. And also understanding, look, Michigan, very aggressive in the secondary of trying to jump short routes, jump hitches, anything out breaking, they will be aggressive at. I look for Texas to score on a double move or any type of, out and up, delayed goes, things of that sort, or a secondary rail out of the backfield. Jaden Blue is very capable of that, as we've seen. Those are some of the things I look for and key on as to how Texas will generate that offense and those points come Saturday. So, again, you guys let me know here in the comments, here in the chat, what you think, what your predictions are. I have Texas winning 27-17 in Ann Arbor and sending a message to the country that they are legitimate national championship contenders. They're legitimate contenders for the SEC year one, and one of the fastest, most explosive, scariest teams in the country. It's there. It just feels like it's their time right now, just like it felt like it was Michigan's time in 2022 and 2023 when they came off of the last time they lost to a football team, which was another school from Texas soil in TCU. So really excited to see how this football game plays out. And, I also like to hear in the comments outliers, right? What players are unsung on either side. If you're a Michigan fan watching this and you're like, damn you, Steve, you don't know what you're talking about. You're an arrogant Texas fan. Y'all about to get that work. Tell me why, right? Don't just keep it surface level. Let's talk ball, right? Because a lot of Michigan fans that I've been interacting with on my channel on YouTube, Fanatic Perspective, here on Bleacher Report and other platforms, are under the impression that we're just another Ohio State or Washington or some cute little spread offense, and we don't play with physicality and we don't play balanced football as well. We are an NFL type system, coach in an NFL manner. The way we'll handle our headsets is in an NFL manner. The staff, this ain't what you think it is. and I'm saying that, I'm trying to say that in the most humble way possible. And I'm here to interact post game as well, right? And, after everything is done and drawn out, and we know who has cleared the smoke of battle, which I believe it will be the Texas Longhorns on Saturday. But Michigan's the champs for a reason. And they've lost 3 football games in the last 3 years. So I have a lot of respect for what Jim Harbaugh built this program up to be, Sherrone Moore being a huge part of it. I have a lot of respect for what he did, Sherrone Moore, that is, when he was interim coach, those games of the Big Ten season. But this is a different animal speed-wise, physically, that I believe Michigan will see. And, even referencing Alabama last year, I don't think is, again, Jalen Milroe, that offensive attack, that's not what you're going to see from Texas, especially a polished, gifted pass like Quinn Ewers. You guys want to put the game in Quinn's hands. I think that's where Quinn will also send a message from a Heisman standpoint of moving himself up in that conversation. Cam Ward went down to the swamp and showed out against Florida last week. I look for Quinn to I don't think it's going to be a blowout of that magnitude or anything like that, but I look for Quinn to put that type of performance on in the big house to etch his name there on that short list of those guys who will be in New York for the Heisman ceremony, because that's a byproduct of the outcome of what Texas will put up. I appreciate everybody that is tuned into the stream. You guys, again, let me know what you think all any thoughts or comments regarding this game, potential outcome, matchups. I've given my thoughts, my 2 cents, if you will, on how I think this will play out. It's been a lot of fun. You can find me on all social media at Fanatic Perspective. Please engage with me here on the Bleacher Report app. Very grateful to Bleacher Report for having me on, and I'll be back next Wednesday. So all this month, I'll be on Wednesdays 5 Central talking Texas. So hook 'em. I appreciate everybody that was watching and enjoying the stream. Horns always up. Hook 'em.